All right, so should I take it from here, Jim?
Yes, please.
Excellent.
Okay. All right, so Kelly will be presenting tonight, and she is PennEnvironment's Global Warming Solutions Associate. So she helps to run PennEnvironment's climate change and clean energy campaigns to raise public awareness, lobby elected officials to support good climate policies, and prevent policies that would further our dependence on fossil fuels. Nice to have you, Kelly. Thank you for speaking for us tonight.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. So I'm really excited to talk to you all about electric vehicles tonight. And I think a really good place to start is kind of a little bit of context. So as many of you probably already know, transportation is climate enemy number one. Throughout the United States, the transportation sector is the number one source of climate pollution. And here in Pennsylvania, it's about a quarter of our greenhouse gas emissions, which is just behind the electricity sector, which takes up about 35% of our emissions. So we know that, if we're going to get to this clean energy future that we so desperately need, we have to take on transportation. And so why are transportation emissions so high? Well, most Americans drive more than 10,000 miles a year, often in inefficient fossil fuel powered vehicles. And because of the way we've built our communities and our lack of investment in transit, most of us have few alternatives, myself included. I currently live in the suburbs. I can't walk to anything. I have to get in my car to drive to where I need to go. So the only way that we can effectively address global warming is by changing how we get around. We need big, ambitious goals to transform transportation and the means to achieve them. So thankfully, we have a roadmap to help us solve this problem. So one of the campaigns that I work on at PennEnvironment is our Destination Zero Carbon campaign. And that campaign lays out 3 goals that can get us closer to this destination. So first is ensuring that all personal vehicles sold after 2035 are electric. And Pennsylvania is actually on the path to making this a reality. The governor recently announced that the state would join we would start working on the state joining the Zero Emissions Vehicle or ZEV program, which would help to put us on this pathway and increase the percentage of electric vehicles that are sold every single year. But in order to make sure that everyone is actually choosing to buy electric, we need both incentives and infrastructure to make it easier for folks to get around in an electric car. The second goal is electrifying all of our transit and school buses by 2030. So electrifying all modes of public transit will eventually mean our travel can be powered by clean, renewable energy. Electrifying buses would also eliminate harmful street level emissions from diesel combustion, which really will benefit the health of the children who board the bus to school every single day, and also anyone who rides a public transit bus to get around town. The third goal is doubling the number of people who travel by walking, biking, and public transit by 2030, because of course, the least polluting car is the one that we don't drive in the first place. So we have to provide more options so that people can choose to travel by foot, bike, or transit. Creating these sustainable communities requires making zero carbon modes of travel the cheapest, easiest, most comfortable, and safest options available. Pennsylvania's transportation is really due for a zero carbon upgrade. So with clean electric cars and buses and safe streets for walking and biking, we can definitely take a big bite out of Pennsylvania's contribution to global warming. And PennEnvironment recently, just last week, released a report called Cleaner Cars for Pennsylvania, which showed that by electrifying our transportation sector, we could reduce greenhouse gas emissions equal to taking over 4 million gas-powered cars off the road or shutting down 5 coal plants. So transportation has a huge impact on our emissions and is definitely an important step that we need to take forward. So I want to take a second and kind of address that poll that we took a little bit earlier and some of the common electric vehicle questions. So the biggest barrier for a lot of people in that poll was range anxiety. So people are concerned that an electric vehicle won't be able to take them to where they need to go. But in reality, electric vehicles have a long enough range to serve the vast majority of the trips that most Americans take. A 2016 study found that the 2013 Nissan Leaf, with a range far below most EVs that are on the market today, could replace 87% of vehicles driven on a given day without recharging. So think about 8 years ago, that was a car built 8 years ago, that was the case. Now just think about how much the technology has already improved in that time. And also according to the Federal Highway Administration's National Household Travel Survey, 75% of car trips were under 10 miles and 95% of trips were less than 30 miles. So as a result of battery improvements, the newest EV models have ranges upwards of 300 miles. So for the vast majority of people, an electric vehicle is going to get you to where you need to go, no problem at all. Another barrier for a lot of people is charging. So for electric vehicles to become mainstream, they of course need to be easy to charge. People correctly notice that there are not nearly as many EV chargers as gas stations out there. A 2019 survey found that the majority of consumers considering an EV purchase believed that there were too few charging stations around their home and work areas, suggesting that, the lack of a ubiquitous charging network is presenting a barrier to wide-scale adoption. Public charging infrastructure doesn't meet current or future demand, and residents without at-home charging options will need public charging. But the good news is that smart public policies can help to streamline how we charge EVs, making it easier for more people to participate in the electric vehicle revolution. So by expanding the number of stations in public places, particularly in dense residential areas and locations where people frequently travel, policymakers can help to support the adoption of more electric vehicles. Another barrier to a lot of people is the cost. So people perceive EVs as outside of the budget of the typical consumer, but there are affordable options already on the market and plenty more on the way. And as Eric mentioned before, used electric vehicles are definitely a fantastic option. And the prices are coming closer to gas-powered cars every single year. They're also more efficient at converting electricity into motion than fossil fuel-powered cars. And while the electricity costs and the cost of charging vary state to state, the Department of Energy found that on average, it costs about half as much to fuel an EV as a gas-powered car. And there are also financial incentives available, like the federal plug-in electric drive vehicle credit, which is up to $7,500. And many states also have additional incentives to sweeten the deal. I have a slide about financial incentives in a little bit. And then something that was not included in the survey, but that I wanted to mention is that a lot of our staunchest environmental advocates will ask, if the car is being charged on a dirtier energy grid, is it really better for the environment? The answer is a resounding yes. The life cycle emissions of EVs versus gas-powered cars are significantly less. So while manufacturing an EV is a little more intensive, there are savings in emissions as soon as you start driving. And that's on a currently mostly fossil fuel electricity grid. Batteries are much more efficient at converting power into energy than engines. An internal combustion engine loses 80% of its energy to heat. So you're using less electricity to move your vehicle than the fossil fuels burned in a motor engine. The other factor that makes EVs better is that they get cleaner over time. So a fossil fuel powered car is always going to have tailpipe emissions. It's always going to burn dirty fossil fuels. But as we start to move our society to be powered by more renewable energy, the grid is getting cleaner, and so does your tailpipe-free EV. So Am I seeing a question pop into the chat? I'm going to take questions at the end, actually, so we'll hop back over to that. Okay, so I wanted to share some policies that local towns can take on in order to promote more electric vehicles. So passing EV ready ordinances, educating residents about electric vehicles like we're doing here tonight, installing public charging stations, we have a goal of electrifying all municipal fleets by 2030. So those are the cars that are driven by, you know, township or county officials for you know, official business. Promoting mobility, so electric car sharing programs, e-bikes and things like that. And supporting the electrification of other vehicles in the community in addition to personal vehicles. So Lyft, Uber, ride shares, electric school buses, electric transit buses, and of course, setting a goal for the percentage of registered electric vehicles in the town or municipality. So I wanted to highlight some things that have been happening here in Westchester. So Westchester has a goal of getting to 100% electric vehicles, I believe by, is it 20, Jim, do you remember what's the year?
Sorry, I couldn't find my mute button on this screen. Yeah, it's a little skewed, but it's a standard thing, right? Till 2050, the right side should be 2050.
Oh, okay. Got shifted over a little bit. Yeah. I thought so, but it looked a little confusing. Okay. Yeah. So Westchester has a goal of getting to 100% electric vehicles by 2050. So this chart kind of shows how we would get to that goal. So we need to have an average of 2,650 vehicles a year going to electric. So we've definitely got some hurdles to cross, but we are making some serious progress as we go. So one of the most important things in order to get people to actually buy electric cars is for them to, of course, know that they're going to be able to charge them when they're out and about, just like if you're driving a gas-powered car and you need to stop at a gas station and get more gas. So we need to expand public charging and build it on public property, make it easier for residents to install on-street charging in front of their houses, make charging accessible, require them to work for different plugs. So something that people may know about electric vehicles is that there are certain Tesla plugs that only plug into Teslas and other plugs that plug into different kinds of electric vehicles. And so that is a hurdle that we need to cross, and we need to make sure that our chargers are universal chargers anywhere that we're putting them in, making sure that there's no membership required so that anybody who needs to pull up and park and charge their car can, standardized fees and pricing, accepting credit cards. So just, you know, overall just making them easy to use, increasing visibility and price transparency. You know, when you're driving down the street, you see that you're passing a gas station, there's a big old sign, you know there's a gas station, you know exactly how much it's gonna cost you to fill your tank. We need that with EV charging stations as well. And of course, dedicated EV charging spaces that are dedicated to EV parking. So, you know, you're stopping at the grocery store, you're not trying to park in the EV parking space and seeing a gas car sitting there in your way, preventing you from charging. So there are already some townships that have installed public charging stations, Westchester Borough, West Whiteland, West Goshen, and some businesses in the area have also installed chargers as perks for their customers. So Giant Grocery, which I have a picture of in a second, Whole Foods, there are chargers in parking garages, and the Clean Energy Future team also plans to organize an employer plug-in challenge to further incentivize more electric vehicles. So here is one example of an electric charger. This is at the Giant in East Bradford Township. And you can see from this map, this is just this shows some of the electric charging stations around the area. So there are definitely plenty of chargers out there. This plug share source, you can go to this website and you can see where the electric vehicle charging stations are in your area. So I wanted to highlight quickly some funding opportunities because we did talk earlier about how cost can be a barrier for some people and prevent some people from wanting to switch to an electric vehicle. So just to highlight a couple of them, there's the Federal Electric Vehicle Tax Credit, the Federal Alternative Fuel Infrastructure Tax Credit, the PA Alternative Fuels Incentive Grant Program, Driving PA Forward rebates for charging, the Regional Greenhouse Gas Initiative, which Pennsylvania is currently in the process of joining, and the Transportation and Climate Initiative. Both those last two are regional initiatives that we are working to join that would help to create some funding. So the last thing that I want to mention before I take some questions is if, you know, clean energy and climate action and promoting more electric vehicles is something that you really care about and you want to get involved, I invite all of you to join PennEnvironment at our annual Climate Action Lobby Day, which is coming up in just 3 weeks on June 10th. We will set up meetings with your state representative and your state senator. We'll train you and prep you and get you all the tools that you need to advocate for a clean energy future. We'll have short 30-minute meetings happening throughout the day. And so I would love for all of you to join us. You can register at this link, which I'll put in the chat in a moment, but it's just bit.ly/climate lobby day. Happy to answer any questions about that. We already have over 600 people registered. We already have 80 Zoom meetings scheduled with legislators. And so I hope that some of you will take part in that. And with that, I will wrap it up. Here's my contact info. If you want to get in touch, you can shoot me an email at kelly@pennenvironment.org or find me on Twitter. I also run PennEnvironment's Twitter and all of PennEnvironment's social media, so you can always find me there as well. And I just threw up the website link to our Destination Zero Carbon page in case people want to learn a little bit more about this campaign. So with that, I will stop sharing my screen, and I think we have a couple of questions in the chat that we can address.
Thank you.
Great, so let's see. We have a question from Andre. What will be the environmental impact of recycling batteries with heavy metals and chemicals? I personally am not an expert on recycling or of battery impact, so I'm not gonna just kind of come up with an answer for you, but maybe one of our friends on the call might have an answer.
Yeah, I could talk about this a little bit if you want.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, so just to make sure like this is just super clear, there's two different types of batteries that we're talking about here. Like the traditional car battery is called a lead acid battery, and the batteries that we're talking about primarily with electric vehicles are called lithium ion batteries. Lithium ion batteries are the ones that people talk about, with a lot of like precious metals and stuff. And so currently with where we're at, electric vehicles, the numbers of them are really taking off. And so as a result, we're in that phase where there's not currently like massive programs set up to recycle the batteries, although, it is possible. So what they're doing right now, some factories or some programs are breaking down like the anode and the cathode and getting the precious metals from that. And then as you recycle them, they're kind of you're left with this like mix of like precious metals that it takes some manpower and some money to get to sort of to get use out of, like to separate them. And as automation and sort of like advances in that recycling technology gets better, we're likely to see more valuable production inputs come from those recycling programs. In another sense, like some factories, what they're doing is they're taking old batteries from electric vehicles and they're putting them in automated cars that are used to like drive around factory facilities, and they like power machines in the factory. So the short answer is that there are things that are being done with regard to recycling, currently with regard to getting metals and also using them. And then there's also a lot more to come in the future.
Yeah, I'll just sum up, Eric, and say it seems like a solvable problem. And as the economies of scale grow, that's something that we'll see solutions for. I also wanted to mention that there's second life for car batteries as power walls and home storage, energy storage thing.
It's really important. Like, I just kind of want to underline that this is commonly an argument that's used by people that are against car batteries, sort of like the the idea of what happens to the life cycle of the battery, like the lithium-ion battery. And I think it's just really important that we that we say that lithium-ion batteries and the recycling processes are not perfect. No one says they are, but they are not a significant enough a reason to sort of like negate electric vehicles as a whole, especially when you were considering the alternative as gas vehicles.
Back to you, Kelly.
Awesome. Thank you. I definitely learned something. So thank you so much, Eric. So the other question I'm seeing in the chat is from Ray. What is the cost of a single phase inverter system and adequate solar panels dedicated to charging one EV at home with solar panels attached to a south-facing garage roof? So I think this will be very dependent on a lot of factors. So I can't give you a number off of the top of my head, but I am going to drop a link into the chat for a resource that's on our website called Energy Sage. And an Energy Sage basically allows you to drop in some info and get an estimate for how much it would cost to solarize your home.
Yeah, I think the big factor there is how many miles you drive a day, right? How many kilowatt hours do you need to generate? And then you can kind of calculate how much solar panels you need to generate that much kilowatt hours.
I want to add one more point, and if that's okay, if we're talking about like a small scale or solar system, unfortunately, part of what's going to factor into your cost is like the permitting process of like your local jurisdiction, and that kind of is influenced by honestly like your policymakers there. And so some permitting processes in the United States are very easy to get, and they're very quick and they're very inexpensive, and other ones are a little bit more cumbersome. And so we're hoping to see that change over the next few years, especially across a lot of the municipalities in our area, meaning it's going to be easier and cheaper to permit solar panels. But that's something that can definitely influence your cost.
And then, thank you, Eric. I'm seeing another question. Will there be enough mines available to dig all the minerals needed to support an all EV world? Minerals like lithium, graphite, nickel, rare earth minerals will be in high demand from countries not necessarily friendly to the US. How will we address this challenge? Have you read the International Energy Agency report, which AWS just released this month? This again is a little bit outside of my area of expertise. I'm wondering if maybe Jim or Eric have a little bit of insight here.
Yeah, go ahead, Eric.
Yeah, sure. So, oh wait, Melanie, did you unmute? Do you want to take this one? Oh, I think she accidentally.
So I didn't see.
Oh, sorry. No, you're good. You're good. I just didn't want to step on your toes.
I just left.
I'm going to close the rooms in a second.
Okay. Yeah. So yeah, your question is definitely a good one, right? Like, how are we going to source all these different things? So again, I think that this is commonly a problem that's like really flagged by a lot of people as like, how are we going to get enough lithium and things like that. And generally, and there's also like, gets into a lot of like the geopolitical tensions and a lot of the issues of certain countries that like, and their like their production practices and like what we're, subtly endorsing. But like, I guess like, and so I really like, this is not really a question that we can answer in like a Zoom session. But for the most part, like, I guess if I'm just giving you like a 2-second response, it's that like, we're not running out of these like materials in terms of, like their need to supply cars, especially with regard to like, as we kick up our recycling, in economics, as virgin resources, increase in value, they get more scarce, people turn more to recycling, and like, we'll go into, other areas to sort of source our precious metals. And so I don't think it's necessarily worth like the borderline mongering of like fear and like uncertainty that a lot of people do with regard to electric vehicles. And it's certainly not problems that we as a society with our capabilities can't, successfully surmount.
All right, thanks guys. We're coming back together now.
Good job, Eric.
Yeah, thank you.
I have a friend who just got a brand new job at Penn and her sole job is to source and recycle rare earth metals from cell phones to be able to put those into electric vehicles and, you know, the future of renewables. So pretty cool.
There you go. There you go.
All right, thanks everybody. I hope you had a good discussion in the breakout rooms. For anybody that, just a heads up, after Paula gives her summary, I'm going to turn off the recording and we can just have, you know, kind of open conversation for as long as people want to stay. But Paula's got a few slides here to go over and kind of a wrap up.
Great, so thank you. We want to thank all of you for participating in this orientation today. And to wrap up, we want to share some key takeaways that we're hoping